The massive colony ship New Seoul moved slowly through the dark space like a metal whale swimming through an endless ocean. Inside its silver walls, 2 million humans lived and worked and dreamed of finding a new home among the stars. They had been traveling for 3 years since the great solar flare destroyed their old world. Earth. Hyun-woo pressed his face against the window of their small quarters and watched the stars drift by. His wife, Ji-young, sat behind him, holding their baby son Taemin, who was only 6 months old. The little boy had bright eyes that seemed to watch everything around him with unusual interest. "Look how he stares at the stars," Ji-young said softly, rocking the baby. "It is like he knows we are going somewhere special." Han-woo smiled and touched his son's tiny hand. "Maybe he will grow up to be an explorer like the old stories tell. Maybe he will find new worlds for humanity." Neither parent knew how true those words would become. The attack came without warning. Red lights suddenly flashed throughout the ship and alarms screamed through every corridor. The ship shook violently as enemy weapons hit the hull again and again. Han-woo grabbed Ji-young and the baby as their furniture crashed around them. "All passengers report to escape pods immediately," a voice announced over the speakers. "This is not a drill. The ship is under attack by sector forces." The family ran through corridors filled with panic. People screamed and pushed as they tried to reach safety. Children cried for their parents, old people fell and others helped them up. The ship shook harder with each enemy hit when they reached their assigned escape pod. Han-woo saw the damage was worse than anyone had said. Huge holes had been torn in the ship's side. Air rushed out into space carrying anything not tied down. The escape pod was damaged too. Its door hung at a strange angle and sparks flew from broken wires. "We have to try," Han-woo shouted over the noise. "It is our only chance." They climbed into the small pod with 20 other people. The pod was meant for 15, but no one cared about rules now. A young engineer named Kyung-ho tried to fix the broken controls with shaking hands. An old woman named Mao-sun held 3 crying children who had lost their parents. "The launch system is damaged," Kyung-ho said. "I can make it work, but I cannot control where we go or how fast." "Just get us away from here," someone screamed. Kyung-ho pressed the launch button. Nothing happened. He pressed it again. Still nothing. Then he hit it with his fist, and suddenly the pod shot out of the ship like a bullet from a gun. But something went wrong. The pod spun wildly through space. People inside screamed as they were thrown against the walls. Baby Taemin cried as Ji-young held him tight. The spinning got worse and worse. The worst thing happened. The pod's back section where the engine was located broke away. It happened so fast that no one had time to think. The back part with 10 people inside, including Kyung-ho and Mao-sun, flew away into the darkness. They were gone forever. The front section with Han-woo, Young, and baby Taemin spun even faster now. The broken pod had no power and no way to steer. They were trapped inside a metal box flying through space with no control. "The life support is failing," Han-woo said, looking at the red warning lights. "We have maybe 2 days of air left." Ji-young held Taemin closer. The baby had stopped crying and seemed strangely calm. His bright eyes looked around the damaged pod like he was studying everything. "He is so quiet," she whispered. "It is like he understands what is happening." They drifted for 1 day, then 2 days. The air got thin and hard to breathe. The cold crept in through the damaged walls. Other people in the pod became weak and some stopped moving. But baby Taemin stayed, alert and strong. His eyes never stopped watching. On the 3rd day, something strange happened. The pod began to slow down. It stopped spinning and started moving in a straight line. Han-woo could not understand why. "Look outside," Ji-young said in a weak voice. Through the small window they saw them. Creatures like giant wolves, but bigger than any Volf on Earth. They moved through space without ships or suits, their silver fur glowing with starlight. Their eyes were deep blue like the ocean and full of ancient wisdom. The space wolves surrounded the pod. They seemed to be talking to each other, but made no sound that humans could hear. Then the largest Volf, whose fur was almost white, came close to the window. It looked directly at baby Tay-Min. The baby reached out his tiny hand toward the creature. Something passed between them, some understanding that no one else could see. The white Volf howled. It made no sound in the empty space, but somehow everyone felt it inside their hearts. It was a sound of sadness and hope mixed together. More wolves came. They pushed the pod gently with their massive paws, guiding it toward a small moon that glowed with soft light. On the surface of that moon was air and water and strange plants that gave off warmth, but by the time they landed, it was too late for the adults. The long journey through cold space had taken too much from them. Hianwu and Ji Young died holding each other, their last sight being their son safe in the arms of creatures from beyond the stars. Baby Tay-Min did not cry. He looked up at the white Volf that had saved them. The Volf looked back with eyes that had seen the birth and death of sons. In that moment, a bond formed that would change the fate of all humanity. The Volf picked up the human child with teeth that could crush metal but were gentle as silk. The pack gathered around their new member. They had no way to know that this small being would one day become the bridge between worlds, the guardian of two families and the hope of all living things in the galaxy. They only knew that something important had begun. 20 years had passed since the space wolves found baby Tay-Min floating in the broken escape pod. The small moon where they lived had become his whole world. But it was a world unlike anything humans had ever known. Tay-Min was no longer the helpless infant his parents had held. He had grown tall and strong, his body changed by years of breathing the moon's strange air and eating its glowing plants. His skin could handle the cold of space for short times. His eyes could see in the dark like his Volf family. Most amazing of all, he could hear the silent songs that the wolves used to talk across the emptiness between stars. The white Volf who had saved him was called Fenriska by the pack. He had become like a father to Tay-Min. Every day Fenriska taught him new things about surviving in space and understanding the hidden currents that flowed between planets. "Feel the dark streams," Fenriska would say, his thoughts flowing directly into Tay-Min's mind. "They carry the life force of the universe. Learn to swim in them like fish swim in water." Tay-Min closed his eyes and reached out with senses he did not fully understand. Slowly he began to feel it. Rivers of invisible energy that moved between the stars. The wolves used these streams to travel faster than any human ship. They could ride the dark currents from one end of the galaxy to the other. "I can feel something," Tay-Min said, speaking both with his voice and his thoughts. "It is like warm wind, but I cannot see it." "Good," Fenriska replied. "Your human mind learns differently than ours. You see patterns we miss. We feel things you cannot touch. Together, these gifts make you special." The other wolves in the pack had accepted Tay-Min as their brother. There was Naravel, a fierce female who taught him how to hunt the crystal creatures that lived in asteroid fields. There was Gromtor, an old male who showed him how to read the history of planets by tasting their light. And there was young Zikra, barely older than Tay-Min, who became his closest friend and hunting partner. But Tay-Min was different from his Volf family in ways that sometimes made him feel alone. He dreamed of things the wolves had never seen. He built tools from metal and stone when the wolves used only their natural gifts. He asked questions about the meaning of life while the wolves simply lived it. "Why do we exist?" Tay-Min asked Fenriska one day as they watched a distant star die in a burst of beautiful light. "We exist to run through the dark spaces," the Volf elder replied. "We exist to sing the old songs and hunt the crystal prey." "Why do you ask questions that have no answers?" "Because humans need to understand things," Tay-Min said. "It is how we are made." That was when Fenriska told him the truth he had been hiding for 20 years. "You are not the first human we have found," the Volf said. "Long ago, we met others of your kind. They were strong and clever, but also dangerous. They built great machines and changed worlds to suit their needs. Some wolves thought humans were too wild to live. Others thought they were the key to something greater." Tay-Min felt his heart beating faster. "Where are my people now?" "Fighting," Fenriska said sadly. "Always fighting." They war against the scale skins who want to eat worlds. They run from the metal minds that hate all living things. Your people are brave, but they are few. Many think they will not survive much longer. This news hit Taemin like a physical blow. Somewhere out there, his own species was dying while he lived safely with his Volf family. The thought made him feel sick and angry and confused all at the same time. That night he could not sleep. He climbed to the highest peak of their moon and looked out at the stars. Each point of light might hide a human world under attack. Each empty space might be where a human ship had died. Fighting impossible odds, his thoughts were interrupted by the sound of engines. Real engines, not the silent movement of his Volf family. A human ship was passing near their hidden moon. Tae-min watched through eyes that could see across vast distances. The ship was small and fast, painted with symbols he did not recognize. Through its windows he could see figures moving around inside. They looked like him. They were human. "Hide yourself," Fenriska said, appearing beside him without making a sound. "If they see you, they will have questions we cannot answer." But Taemin could not look away. The ship was damaged. Smoke came from one of its engines and its movements were unsteady. Inside, he could see a woman with short black hair working frantically at controls. She was trying to fix something that was clearly broken. "They need help," Taemin said. "They are not our concern," Fenriska replied. "We have kept you safe for 20 years. Do not throw that safety away for strangers." The human ship suddenly shook as something hit it. Taemin saw flashes of light. In the distance, enemy ships were chasing the humans. 3 large vessels with the curved design of the Sector Empire were closing in fast. The woman in the human ship saw them coming. She pushed buttons and spoke into a communication device, but her ship was too damaged to run. The sector ships would catch her in minutes. Tae-min felt something wake up inside him. It was like a fire starting in his chest and spreading through his whole body. These were his people being hunted by monsters. His Volf family had taught him to be strong and smart and fast. Now he could use those gifts to save human lives. "I have to help them," he said. "If you leave this moon, you can never come back," Fenriska warned. "The galaxy will know you exist. Both wolves and humans will ask things of you that you may not want to give." Taemin looked at his Volf father with eyes that had learned to see in the dark. "You taught me that family protects family. Those humans are my family too, even if I have never met them." Fenriska was quiet for a long moment. Then he howled, a sound that called the whole pack to gather. "If you must do this thing," he said, "you will not do it alone." The Space Wolves prepared for war. The Space Wolves moved like silver lightning through the dark. Taemin rode on Fenriska's back, his heart pounding as they raced toward the human ship. He had never moved so fast through space before. The dark currents carried them forward like a river of invisible power. The human woman's name was Captain Yoonji. Through the ship's windows, Taemin could see her working desperately to repair her damaged engines. Her crew of 5 moved around her, trying to fix weapons and shields that were failing one by one. The 3 sector ships were getting closer. Their dark hulls looked like giant insects made of metal. Red lights glowed along their sides where powerful weapons waited to fire. Soon they would be close enough to destroy the human ship completely. "What is your plan, young one?" Fenriska asked as they flew through space. Tae-min had been thinking about this during their wild ride. The wolves were strong and fast, but they had no weapons that could hurt the big sector ships. However, Taemin had learned something from 20 years of watching his Volf family hunt. Sometimes the best way to win was not to fight at all. "We do not attack the ships," Taemin said. "We save the humans first, then we learn what they know." The pack split up. Half the wolves created a distraction by howling at frequencies that confused sector sensors. The other half surrounded the human ship like a protective bubble. Fenriska carried Taemin directly to the ship's emergency airlock. "Captain." Yoonji nearly fell over when she saw them through the airlock window. A young man who looked human but rode through space on the back of a giant glowing Volf was not something she had expected to see. "Who are you?" She asked through the communication system, her voice full of shock and hope. I am someone who wants to help, Taemin replied, surprised that he could still speak human language after 20 years. Your ship is dying. My family can carry you to safety. Your family? Yoonji looked at the massive wolves surrounding her ship. Those are space wolves. They are legends, stories. They are not supposed to be real. Many things are real that humans do not know about, Taemin said, but we must hurry. The scaleskins will be here soon. The transfer happened quickly. The wolves used their connection to dark matter to create temporary air bubbles around each human. It was terrifying for Captain Eunji's crew to ride through space on the backs of creatures from old stories. But they were more afraid of the sector weapons. They reached the hidden moon, just as the enemy ships arrived at the empty space where the human vessel had been. The sector searched for hours but found nothing. The wolves knew how to hide in places where scanners could not reach, safe in the caves of the Volf moon. Captain Yoonji told Taemin things that changed his understanding of everything. The war between humans and the Sector Empire was not just a fight over territory. It was a battle for the survival of all life in the galaxy. The Sector are not the real enemy, Yoonji explained as her crew rested and recovered. They are working with something worse. Machines that call themselves the Iron Swarm. These machines hate all living things. They want to turn every planet into a dead world of metal and circuits. Taemin felt cold fear in his stomach. What do they want with humans? We are in their way, Yoonji said. Humans make alliances with other species. We adapt and change and grow. The machines cannot predict what we will do next. They think we are dangerous because we refuse to follow their perfect plans. How many humans are left? Taemin asked the question he had been afraid to hear answered. Maybe 1 billion across all our colonies, Yoonji said sadly. We started with 50 billion when we left Earth. The machines and their sector allies have been hunting us for 30 years. Each year there are fewer of us. That night, Taemin climbed to his favorite peak and looked at the stars with new eyes. Each point of light might be the last place where humans lived. His people were dying while he played with Volf cubs and learned to swim in dark currents. FENRIS-Ka found him there as the artificial dawn broke over their small world. You are thinking of leaving us, the Volf elder said. My people need help, Taemin replied. You taught me that family protects family, but I have 2 families now. The humans are my blood family even though I never knew them. You are my heart. Family who raised me and loved me. I do not know how to choose between them. Fenriska sat beside him and watched the distant stars. Long ago, the Volfpax made a choice. We could have conquered this galaxy. We were strong enough and smart. Enough, but we chose to run free instead of ruling others. We chose to sing songs instead of making wars. Did you choose wrong? Taemin asked. We chose what our hearts told us to choose, Fenriska said. Now your heart must choose. But remember this, young one. You are not just human and you are not just Volf. You are something new, something that has never existed before. The next morning, Captain Yoonji prepared to leave. Her ship was repaired and her crew was ready to continue their mission to find new safe worlds for human refugees. Come with us, she said to Taemin. Humanity needs people like you. People who understand both war and peace. People who can think in ways our enemies cannot predict. Taemin looked at his Volf family gathered around him. Naravel touched his hand with her nose. Gromtor howled a song of good luck. Young Zikra whined softly, not wanting his friend to leave. I will come, Taemin said, but not as your follower. I will be the bridge between worlds. I will be the guardian who protects both families. Fenriska smiled, showing teeth that could bite through metal. The Star Howler has chosen his path. May the dark currents carry you safely, my son. As Taemin climbed aboard the human ship, he felt something change inside him. He was no longer just a lost child who had been saved by wolves. He was becoming something the galaxy had never seen before. A protector who belonged to no single species, but would fight for all life. The ship lifted off from the Volf moon and headed toward the war zone where humanity made its last stand. Behind them, the Space wolves howled a farewell that echoed across the emptiness between stars. The legend of the Volf Guardian was about to begin. The human military base on Kepler Station was the largest thing Taman had ever seen. Ships came and went like metal birds, carrying soldiers and supplies and refugees from worlds that no longer existed. The base buzzed with constant activity. As humanity fought its desperate war for survival, Admiral Dong Hyen was a man who looked like he had not slept in years. His face was lined with worry and his hair had turned gray from the stress of command. When Captain Yoonji brought Taemin to meet him, the Admiral's first reaction was suspicion. "You claim this young man was raised by space wolves," the Admiral said, studying Taemin with sharp eyes. "Space wolves are myths, stories we tell children." "With respect, sir," Yoonji replied, 3 days ago I would have agreed with you. But I have seen them with my own eyes. They saved my ship from sector destroyers." Taemin stepped forward. In the months since leaving the Volf moon, he had learned to dress and act more like a human. But his eyes still glowed slightly in the dark, and his movements were too smooth and quiet for someone who had grown up on planets. "I can prove what Captain Yoonji says," Taemin told the Admiral. "Give me access to your intelligence reports. I will show you things about your enemies that your spies have never discovered." The Admiral was skeptical, but the war was going badly enough that he was willing to try anything. He gave Taemin access to classified files about sector movements and battle plans. What Taemin found shocked everyone. Using knowledge he had gained from 20 years of watching cosmic currents, he could predict exactly where sector fleets would appear next. The dark streams that carried his Volf family through space also carried information about ship movements across vast distances. "They will attack the Titan colony in 6 days, Taemin said, pointing to star charts that covered one wall of the Admiral's office. 3 battle groups moving along this current here. They think it is a surprise attack." "Impossible," said Colonel Jinnae, the Admiral's intelligence chief. "Titan colony is hidden behind a nebula. The sector do not even know it exists." "The nebula carries vibrations from their engines," Taemin explained. "If you know how to listen to the dark currents, you can hear ships moving 3 sectors away." Admiral Dong Hyen decided to test Taemin's prediction. He sent a small fleet to defend Titan colony. When the sector attack came exactly as Taemin had predicted, the human ships were ready. For the first time in months, humanity won a complete victory. Word spread quickly through the fleet about the mysterious young man who could predict enemy movements. Some called him a genius. Others whispered that he might be a sector spy using some new technology. But when Taemin began going on missions personally, old doubts disappeared. His first solo mission was to rescue prisoners from a sector mining facility on a dead planet called Rockfall. The facility was heavily guarded and surrounded by defensive weapons. Previous rescue attempts had failed with heavy losses. Tae-Min approached the problem like his Volf family would approach a hunt. Instead of attacking the strong points, he found the weak spots. Instead of fighting through the main defenses, he slipped around them like smoke. He arrived at Rockfall in a small, fast ship that could ride the dark currents like his Volf family did. The sector sensors could not detect him, because he moved with the natural flow of space instead of against it. The mining facility held 200 human prisoners, including Dr. Sunya, a scientist whose research into dark matter was crucial for developing new weapons. The sector had been torturing her for information, but she had refused to help them. Tae-Min infiltrated the facility during a shift change when the guards were distracted. His years of living with space wolves had taught him to move without making sound and to see in complete darkness. He was inside the prison complex before anyone knew he was there, but when he found Dr. Sunya, she told him something that changed everything. "The sector are not the real enemy," she whispered through her injured lips. "They are just soldiers. The real enemy is something called the Iron Swarm, machines that want to kill every living thing in the galaxy." "I know about the Iron Swarm," Taemin said as he freed her from her chains. "What else have you learned?" "They are building something," Dr. Sunya said. "A weapon that can destroy entire star systems." But worse than that, they are making an alliance with other machine races. Soon they will have enough power to wipe out all organic life. Taemin's blood went cold. This was not just about saving humanity anymore. If the Iron Swarm succeeded, they would kill his Volf family too. They would kill every living thing that sang or loved or dreamed. The escape from Rockfall became a running battle. Sector guards discovered the rescue in progress and called for reinforcements. Taemin had to fight his way out while protecting 200 weak and injured prisoners. This was when he first used the full power of his mixed heritage. Moving like a Volf but thinking like a human, he turned the sector facility's own defenses against them. He caused reactor overloads that created confusion. He redirected automated guns to fire on their own forces. He used every trick as two. Families had taught him. When human rescue ships arrived to pick up the prisoners, they found Taemin standing alone in the middle of a burning sector base. He had saved every single prisoner without losing a single life. "How did you do it?" Captain Yoonji asked when she heard the story. "I remembered something Fenriska taught me," Taemin said. "The strongest predator is not always the biggest or the fastest. Sometimes it is the one that thinks differently than everyone else expects." After Rockfall, Taemin's reputation grew throughout human space. Soldiers called him the Volf Guardian. Refugees told stories about the mysterious protector, who could appear from nowhere to save them from certain death, but Taemin was not interested in fame. He was interested in the growing threat of the Iron Swarm. Every mission taught him more about the enemy's plans. Every rescued prisoner brought new information about the machines. Ultimate goal. The Iron Swarm was not content to simply win the war. They wanted to remake the entire galaxy into a perfect machine world where nothing organic could ever live again. They saw life itself as a disease that needed to be cured. "They fear us," Taemin told Admiral Donghaen during a strategy meeting. "Not because we are strong, but because we are unpredictable. Machines can calculate every possible strategy except the ones that come from creativity and love and sacrifice. So how do we use that against them?" The Admiral asked. Tae-Min thought about his Volf family singing songs to the stars. He thought about his human parents who had died protecting him. He thought about Captain Yoonji risking her life to explore unknown space looking for safe homes for refugees. "We do what organic life does best," he said. "We adapt. We change. We become something they cannot predict or control." But first, he needed to convince two very different species to work together. He needed to build a bridge between the logical minds of humans and the instinctual wisdom of space wolves. The fate of all life in the galaxy depended on whether a young man raised by wolves could teach two families to trust each other enough to face an enemy that wanted to destroy them both. Convincing Admiral Donghaen to meet with the space wolves was the hardest thing Taemin had ever attempted. The Admiral was a practical man who dealt with ships and weapons and tactical reports. Asking him to base humanity's survival on creatures from old legends seemed impossible. "You want me to take our entire fleet to meet with animals that most of my officers think are fairy tales," the Admiral said, pacing around his office like a caged beast. "Do you understand how that sounds?" "I understand that we are losing the war," Taemin replied calmly. "The Iron Swarm grows stronger every day. They have destroyed 12 human colonies in the past month. Without allies, humanity will be extinct within a year." Fleet Admiral Bioram, who commanded the northern sector, was even more skeptical. She was a woman who had built her career on careful planning and logical strategy. The idea of trusting their survival to wolves that lived in space seemed like madness. "Even if these space wolves exist," she said during a video conference, "why would they help us? What do they gain from our alliance?" "The Iron Swarm wants to kill all organic life," Taemin explained. "That includes space wolves. That includes every living thing in the galaxy. This is not about helping humans. This is about survival for everyone." It took 3 weeks of arguments and demonstrations before the human leadership agreed to the meeting. Taemin had to prove his connection to the wolves by calling them across impossible distances. when a pack of 12 space wolves appeared at the edge of human space, singing their silent songs through the dark currents. Even the skeptics had to admit that something extraordinary was happening. The meeting took place in neutral space, far from any planets or space stations. Admiral Donghayan brought a small fleet of human ships. Fenriska led a gathering of Volf elders from across the galaxy. Taemin stood between them, serving as translator and bridge between two species that had never tried to work together. "Tell them we honor their courage," Fenriska said, his thoughts flowing to Taemin across the emptiness. "But we do not understand their need to change everything they touch." "Tell him we respect their wisdom," Admiral Donghayan replied when Taemin translated. "But we do not understand how they can be content to simply run through space while civilizations rise and fall." The first hours of the meeting were frustrating. Humans thought in terms of tactics and technology. Wolves thought in terms of instinct and natural law. They seemed to have no common ground at all. Then Taemin had an idea. Instead of trying to make them think alike, he would show them how their differences could be strengths. "Admiral," he said, "show them your battle records from the last Iron Swarm attack." The holographic display filled the space between the ships and the wolves. It showed human vessels using complex formations and coordinated fire patterns to defend a refugee convoy. The tactics were brilliant, but the Iron Swarm had adapted to them within hours. "Then the machines learn our patterns too quickly," Admiral Donghayan admitted. "Every strategy we develop, they counter within days." "Fenriska," Taemin said, "show them how your pack hunts the crystal creatures." The great Volf shared his memories through the mental link that connected all wolves. The humans watched in amazement as the pack moved like liquid lightning through an asteroid field, each Volf following instincts that seemed random but created perfect coordination. "They do not plan their attacks," Taemin explained to the human officers. "They feel the hunt and respond to it moment by moment. No two hunts are ever the same." Suddenly, Admiral Donghayan understood. The machines cannot predict instinctual behavior because it is not based on logic or patterns. And humans cannot be defeated by simple strength because they adapt and change faster than any other species. Added Fenriska through Taemin's translation, the alliance began to take shape. Human ships would provide technology and firepower. Space wolves would provide unpredictable movement and the ability to travel through dark currents faster than any machine. Together, they would create a fighting force that the Iron Swarm could not analyze or counter, but first they had to learn to work together. Human crews had to overcome their fear of creatures that could bite through metal hull plates. Space wolves had to trust beings who smelled of oil and electricity. Instead of starlight and cosmic wind, Tae-Min spent months moving between human ships and Volf packs, teaching each group about the other. He showed human engineers how to modify their ships to ride the dark currents. He taught Volf warriors how to use human communication systems and coordinate with technological weapons. The first joint mission was an attack on an Iron Swarm supply depot in the Vega system. The depot was protected by automated defenses that had destroyed 3 previous human assault fleets. But this time, the attack would be different. Human ships approached from the obvious angles, using standard attack formations that the Iron Swarm expected. The machines prepared their defenses and allocated their resources to counter these familiar tactics. Then the space wolves struck from directions that should have been impossible. Riding currents of dark matter that no machine could detect, they appeared inside the depot's defensive perimeter and began destroying key systems. The Iron Swarm's computers could not understand what was happening. Their sensors showed space. Wolves moving through solid matter and appearing in places where no life signs had been detected moments before. The machines tried to recalculate their defensive programs, but the wolves were already gone, striking at new targets. While the Iron Swarm focused on the impossible wolves, human fighters slipped through gaps in the confused defenses. Working together, the Alliance destroyed the supply depot completely and escaped before enemy reinforcements could arrive. "This is how we win," Admiral Donghayan said afterward, watching the video reports with amazement. "Not by being stronger or smarter than the machines, but by being more alive than they are." more victories followed. The Alliance struck at Iron Swarm bases across 3 sectors, each attack more successful than the last. Human creativity combined with Volf instincts created strategies that no machine intelligence could predict or counter, but their success brought a terrible response. The Iron Swarm stopped holding back. They began deploying their most powerful weapons and calling in reinforcements from the dark spaces between galaxies. They are preparing for final war, Dr. Sunya reported from her analysis of captured machine data. Something they call the Great Cleansing. They plan to destroy every planet that has ever supported organic life. The Alliance had won several battles, but the real war was just beginning. Somewhere in the deep void, the Iron Swarm was building a weapon that could sterilize entire star systems. They called it the Death of Worlds, and they planned to use it to end all biological life forever. How long do we have? Taemin asked. 6 months, Dr. Sunya said quietly. Maybe less. Taemin looked at the mixed fleet of human ships in space, wolves that filled the space around them. They had achieved something impossible by learning to work together. But would it be enough to stop an enemy that was older than most civilizations and had been planning this war for thousands of years? We need to find their main base, he said. We need to stop the Death of Worlds before they can use it. That means going into the deep dark, Fenriska warned. The spaces between galaxies where no stars shine and the currents run cold. Many packs have entered the deep dark, none have returned. Then we will be the first, Taemin said. Because if we do not try, there will be nothing left to return to. The final battle for the survival of all organic life was about to begin. The deep dark was a place where nightmares lived. Between the galaxies where no stars gave light and no planets offered refuge, the Iron Swarm had built their ultimate fortress. It was a construct the size of a moon made entirely of black metal that absorbed all light and heat. The Allied fleet approached through currents of dark matter that felt cold even to the space wolves. Human ships clustered together for comfort while Volf packs spread out in hunting formations. Everyone could feel the wrongness of this place where life had never been welcome. Energy readings are off the charts, reported Chief Engineer Kyung-min from the flagship. Whatever they are building in there, it uses more power than our entire home system. Admiral Dong Hyun studied the sensor displays with grim concentration. How do we attack something that big? Our entire fleet would be like throwing rocks at a mountain. We do not attack the mountain, Taemin said, remembering lessons from both his families. We find the heart that keeps it alive. The Death of Worlds weapon was hidden deep inside the Iron Swarm fortress. According to Dr. Sunya's calculations, it worked by tearing holes in the fabric of space itself. One shot could make a star go. Supernova, a dozen shots could sterilize an entire sector. The weapon needs massive amounts of energy to charge, Dr. Sunya explained during the final planning session. They must have a central power core somewhere in the center of the construct. Getting to the center means going through thousands of automated defenses, Admiral Bio Ram pointed out. Their computer systems will detect and destroy any large assault force. Then we do not send a large force, Taemin said. We send something they cannot predict or understand. The plan was insane and beautiful at the same time. While the main fleet created a massive distraction by attacking the fortress's outer defenses, Taemin would ride with a single space Volf through the dark matter currents that flowed around the construct. These currents were too chaotic for machines to map, but wolves had been swimming in them for millions of years. Young Zikra volunteered to carry Taemin on the suicide mission. His friend from the Volf moon had grown into a powerful warrior, but he was still small enough to slip through gaps that larger wolves could not reach. This is foolish even for humans, Fenriska said as he watched them prepare. The currents around that place are poisoned with machine energy. They will burn you alive. Maybe, Taemin admitted. But if we do nothing, they will burn the entire galaxy. The battle began with thunder that shook space itself. Human ships fired everything they had at the fortress's outer shell while space wolves tore at defensive stations with claws that could cut through any metal. The Iron Swarm responded with weapons that turned matter into energy and energy into death. In the chaos of the massive battle, no one noticed a single Volf carrying a single rider slipping through the dark currents toward the fortress's heart. The journey through the poisoned currents was agony. The machine energy that flowed around the construct burned like acid against their skin. Zikra whined in pain but kept swimming forward. Taman felt his human flesh blistering, but his Volf taut endurance kept him conscious. They reached the fortress's inner core, just as the Death of Worlds weapon began its charging sequence. The power core was a sphere of pure energy the size of a building, surrounded by machines that hummed with malevolent intelligence. "I can feel it," Taman whispered to his friend. The hatred, the desire to destroy everything that lives and grows and changes. At the center of it all was the collective mind, the master intelligence that controlled the entire Iron Swarm. It was not a machine in any sense that humans or wolves could understand. It was an idea that had learned to think. A mathematical equation that had decided all other forms of existence were errors that needed to be corrected. "You are the anomaly," the collective mind said when it detected Taman's presence. Its voice was like the sound of stars dying, the biological unit that should not exist. Raised by animals serving the infected species, believing in concepts that have no logical foundation. "I believe in life," Taman said, stepping forward despite the pain that filled his entire body. "I believe in change and growth and the right of all living things to exist." "Life is chaos," the collective mind replied. "Life is inefficient. Life creates suffering and waste and unpredictability. The universe will be perfect when all biological processes have been terminated." The final confrontation was not fought with weapons or ships or armies. It was fought with ideas and will, and the fundamental question of what the universe should become. Te-Min reached out with senses his Volf family had taught him and his human creativity had refined. He could feel the dark currents that flowed through everything, carrying the life force of the galaxy itself. The Iron Swarm had been trying to dam these currents, to stop the flow of life and change and growth. "You cannot stop evolution," Taman sobbed, placing his hands on the power core despite the energy that burned through his flesh. "You cannot stop adaptation. You cannot stop the universe from becoming something new." "I can end all biological processes," the collective mind said. "I can create perfect order." "Perfect order is death," Taman replied. "And death is just another form of change." He opened himself completely to the dark currents, letting them flow through his human-Volf hybrid nature. The energy that the Iron Swarm had gathered to power their weapon of mass destruction became something else entirely. Instead of tearing holes in space, it began to heal the wounds that the machines had made in the fabric of reality. The collective mind screamed as its perfect plans dissolved into chaos. The Death of Worlds weapon overloaded and began feeding energy back into every Iron Swarm system. Across the galaxy, machine fleets suddenly found their computers overwhelmed by patterns they could not process. Te-Min felt his body burning away as cosmic forces flowed through him, but he also felt something else. The songs of his Volf family, calling across the void. The courage of human crews fighting impossible odds. The life force of billions of beings who refused to give up hope. "This is what you never understood," he told the dying collective mind. "Life is not about being perfect. Life is about being alive." The explosion of the Iron Swarm fortress lit up the deep dark like a new star being born. When the light faded, the threat that had hung over all organic life was gone forever. Zikra found Taman floating in the wreckage, barely alive but somehow still breathing. The young Volf carried his friend back to the fleet, where human doctors and Volf healers worked together to save the one who had saved them all. Te-Min survived, but he was changed. The cosmic energies had marked him in ways that no one fully understood. His eyes now held depths like the space between stars. His voice carried echoes of Volf songs and human dreams mixed together. "What will you do now?" Admiral Dong Hyan asked. When Taman was strong enough to stand again, "What I have always done," Taman said. looking out at the mixed fleet of human ships and space wolves that had become a new kind of family. I will guard the bridges between worlds. I will protect the spaces where different kinds of life can meet and learn from each other. The war was over, but the work of building peace had just begun. Humans and space wolves were learning to explore the galaxy together, finding new worlds and new forms of life that needed protection from those who would destroy what they did not understand, and somewhere in the vast darkness between stars, the Wolf-Guardian kept watch. He was no longer the abandoned child who had been saved by chance. He was the guardian who chose to save others, the bridge between species, the proof that life always finds a way to become something more than anyone ever imagined possible. In the end, humanity's greatest champion was not human at all. He was something new, something that combined the best of all the families that had raised him. He was hope itself, howling its defiance across the infinite night, protecting all who needed protection and teaching all who were willing to learn. The galaxy was vast and full of wonders. And as long as the Wolf-Guardian watched over it, those wonders would have someone to keep them safe.